Hi, I'm Janine. Thank you for watching my channel. I talk about sewing a wardrobe for a woman over 50. In my last video, I showed you a few patterns that I had picked out to make things for me, for spring tops. I'm going to show you one of those, plus I have sewn something for a man over 50, and I've picked up a few patterns. I've put timestamps in the box below, so if you'd like to skip to something you can, but I really hope you'll watch the whole video. And if you're not a subscriber, I hope you'll click the subscribe box and the bell so you'll be notified whenever I post a new video. What I am wearing. Last summer I made a short-sleeved version of Simplicity 9275 and I wore it to death. I really like that top. So I decided to make a long-sleeved version to wear this winter. So I made this about a month ago, and again it's been worn a lot. Not just because of the style, but also because I have a bunch of navy bottoms and I didn't have much to wear with navy. So this is a really beefy jersey that I got at Fabric Mart, and it's navy and brown. It's got these little splotches. It's either an animal print or it's amoebas. I made the same version as last time, except I used long sleeves and I added the little pocket that goes into the peplum and a Kylie in the machine tag. You know that I like to sew for me, but I also do enjoy sewing things for my husband from time to time. The Pattern Review online community has an annual sewing bee each year, and for the 5th year I have entered that. A really quick summary of the contest. There is a challenge announced. You have 1 week to make the challenge. The instructions for the challenge are pretty vague. At the end of the week, judges select the people to go on to the next round. So you can only enter the first round. You have to be admitted by the contest committee to subsequent rounds. And with each subsequent round, the challenges get tougher. So the challenge this year for round 1 was to make a hoodie top for an adult and have some sort of accent or embellishment. That's all the information you get. And honestly, I was not super excited about a hoodie, because when I picture myself in a hoodie, I picture myself at about 16 wearing one of those really crummy high school ones. Fortunately, I told my husband about the challenge and he was really excited by it. He wanted to have a hoodie, so I decided to make one for him for my entry. So I went online and I wound up using a pattern from one of the Canadian companies that I highlighted in my free Canadian pattern review. This was not one of their free patterns, but I used the Thread Theory Finlayson sweater. And that is a sweater with either a lapped front collar or a hoodie. I downloaded the pattern. It was 40 pages. It took me almost an entire hockey game to take together the pages and cut them out. Now, one of the really wonderful things about sewing for a man is I just had to check the measurements for his chest and his waist, and then the front length and the sleeve length. I didn't have to make any adjustments, so it was so much easier to get the pattern ready. I did not have any fabric, so I ran over to Fabric Land and picked out what I thought was a really pretty blue sweatshirt fabric. And the reason that I went with that color is because the theme that I used for the embellishment was his motorcycle. And the logo for his motorcycle is blue, black, and white ivory. So I didn't want to make anything in black because black is terrible for photographing, and if you're entering a contest online, you have to have good pictures. So I went with the blue, and I think it turned out to be a really good choice. When I bought the fabric, I didn't really know what I was going to do for accents or embellishments, so I picked up some bias tape and I picked up some grosgrain ribbon in black, ivory, and red, and thought I might be able to make that work. At the same time, I bought some patterns that I'm going to tell you about later. So after thinking about it a bit, I decided on a few accents and embellishments that I wanted to make. And the first one was on the back facing. This pattern includes an optional back facing that you just stitch into the back, and it's actually the first thing that you prepare. So I went out and found a little motorcycle embroidery pattern, and I downloaded that. I'm going to put a link to the company down below. And that pattern was only 30 cents. So the first thing I did was embroider that, and then I added a Kylie in the machine label. And that's actually the first step in sewing this pattern. I decided to add some stripes on it, and I thought about putting one around the chest, but my husband told me he wouldn't like that. So I did a vertical stripe down one of the sleeves. And initially I started with the 3 pieces of ribbon that I'd bought at Fabricland, and those were 1-inch wide pieces of gross grain ribbon. So I took a bunch of them and I tried putting them on to heat and bond. And it was a 3-inch wide strip of ribbon, which was too wide, but it was also really stiff, so I set that aside. And on Saturday, I ran over to my local sewing store, which is Out of Hand Quilting, and I talked to one of the women there, and she suggested maybe going with a lighter weight ribbon. But more than that, she said, use steam a seam. So I picked up some ribbon there and a pattern that I'm going to show you later. But I came home with that, and I tested out using the steam a seam, and it worked so much better. So what I did is I first attached the steam a seam and then put it down the sleeve, the 1-inch wide ribbon, pressed that on, and then I top stitched it. Then I took the 3/8 inch wide piece, set it down the center of the black ribbon, pressed that, and then I stitched that, and it turned out so well. And the ribbon it's not too stiff for the sleeve, which I think is really important. I've been wanting to use my scan and cut machine more, and I'm not going to talk much about it now because I still don't really know what I'm doing, and whatever I say will probably be wrong. After many tries and almost a whole sheet of heat transfer vinyl, I did get his bike's logo on the back of the shirt, and I think it looks really good. It's quite slick, and I definitely need to spend at least an afternoon playing around with that scan and cut so I understand how to use it. So that's all I'm going to say about that because I still don't know what I'm doing. The final embellishment that I added was a badge that he had around. He dug it out and he said, here, you can just sew this on with your machine. Well, it's a rubber badge. So I had to sew that on by hand, and that's just on the right front breast. So it's done, and he is happy with it. I have told him that this cannot go into the washer or the dryer. Between the rubber badge and the scan and cut and the ribbon, I think it's something that needs to be treated a little bit carefully, so I really hope that it isn't worn to change the oil in the motorcycle. I really like this pattern. It was not an inexpensive pattern. It was $18 Canadian, but I know it's something that I'll use quite a bit because it's a basic. I have to say that the collar went together so beautifully. I was concerned that I'd be messing around with that, but I sewed it exactly as stated, clipped exactly where marked, and it just turned perfectly. There were no little pleats or bunching in the corners. It turned out really well. So good pattern that will be used again for him. Took about 3 hours to sew the pattern. Many more hours for the embellishments, but it's done now, and I think it will be worn a fair bit. In my last video, linked up here, I told you about a bunch of patterns that I wanted to make up for me, ones that fit my shape profile at the moment, which is fitted through the chest, a little bit of negative ease over the bust, a little shape around the waist, and then kind of swoops over everything else. I have made up one project. The first pattern that I tried is Simplicity 9229. I picked this pattern because it has princess seams, or at least it looked like it has princess seams. I used a piece of fabric from my stash. It was an Ottoman knit that I got at Fabric Mart. I looked at some reviews of this pattern, and everybody said that it was quite form-fitting, and I do not want quite form-fitting. So I measured the pattern pieces, and I actually wound up cutting a 24, and I would normally cut an 18 to a 20. I also had to add a fair bit to it because the way the pattern is designed, it cuts right in the middle of my belly, and that's not exactly a place that I want to highlight with a hem. So I added just over an inch at the length and shorten line, and then I added 2 inches at the bottom hem, and that seemed to fit pretty well. So this pattern doesn't actually have princess seams. It's got really just panels at the side. And one of the options that they suggest on the pattern is to use faux leather or suede at the side. And that's because it's not princess seams, it's really just little panels. So compared to this top, where the princess seams end here, on the new top, they end almost underneath the arm size. So they don't give you as much shaping as you think that they would. After I'd sewn it up, I wound up increasing the curve underneath the bust just a smidge for about 3 inches. I took off about ½ inch and just kind of added a little more shape there so that it gave me more of the shape that I wanted. I also took ½ inch off the edge of the shoulders. Now, that is significant because this was a 24, and normally if I sew a 24 top, I have to take off well over 1 inch on each shoulder, otherwise the sleeves hang way too far down. But that says to me that this is drafted really small. So I was able to go to a much bigger size and not have it be huge through the shoulders. The final result is that I do like the top. I'm going to be wearing it to work. I think that a lighter weight, more drapey fabric would be better for this because it is really a pretty casual top. And I would use it again for maybe a lighter weight jersey and do some color blocking with the panels on the side. So that's the first one of my spring tops that I've made up, and more will come. Patterns. So I bought a bunch of patterns. I do not have hundreds and hundreds of patterns, but I have quite a few. But I think that, you know, like everybody, I'm out there looking for that perfect pattern. So I have kind of bought a few more than I normally would over the last couple of weeks. When I was at Fabricland getting the fabric for the hoodie, I noticed that they had Berta patterns on sale 50% off, and Butterick is always 40% off. Now, in Canada, we do not have 99-cent pattern sales. 50% off is really good. So those of you in the States have no idea how spoiled you are, because most of us don't get that kind of pricing. So I have to be a little more careful about picking out patterns. So I went in thinking about what I had decided, what kind of shaping I wanted, and I wound up buying at Fabricland 1 Butterick and 2 Berta patterns. The first pattern that I got is Butterick 6567. This is a Lisette pattern for a dress, and it has some nice shaping down the sides, and it has a little yoke. I do want to make some dresses this summer, and I saw this pattern made up in a review, and the person who made it had used a really pretty medium colored indigo without color blocking on the yoke, and I think that's something that I would do with this. But again, I like the shaping on it and the lines. Then I bought 2 of the Berta sale patterns. In Berta, I wear a 46 or a 48, and most of their patterns just go to 44. So I wound up buying a couple of their plus size patterns, and that way I don't have to mess around as much, I guess. First one is Berta Style 6036. It's a dress part pattern, and it has bust darts, back darts, and seaming at the waist. I don't like the version that has kind of the floaty stuff on it. I like the straight one. And that's probably something I would make for the summer. Then I got Berta Style 6034, which is a jacket and a coat. And this coat looks so much like the Merchant & Mills Strand jacket, which is something that's been on my list for years. I like this because it does have some nice seaming on it, so it will have shape. And I think that the short jacket could almost be made in a linen or something and be worn as a top. Then I got into Kwik Sew patterns. Kwik Sew has been discontinued, so part of me just wants to buy every single Kwik Sew I can find. So I was looking around online, and I found a little shop in Williams Lake, British Columbia that had a ton of Kwik Sew patterns, so I got 5 from them. The first one is Kwik Sew 4139. It is a jacket pattern, but this can be made either in shearling or in a quilted fabric. Now that I've lived through another winter here, I think a faux shearling coat would be really nice for days that aren't too cold and when it's not too snowy. So this is kind of a next winter project one. And I liked this pattern because it does have some seaming and some shape at the waist. Then I got another raincoat pattern. I just made an anorak. Why did I buy another pattern? I don't know. Actually, I really don't know, but I figured I'd get this. I keep seeing waterproof fabrics, and I think that it would be quite nice to have a waterproof raincoat. This pattern number is Kwik Sew 3622. If I make this, I will definitely drop the drawstring down so it's at my waist and not up here as it is right now. Then I bought a really basic polo shirt pattern, Kwik Sew 3532. It's difficult to find polo shirt patterns, so when I saw one, I just thought I'd grab it because they are going to be gone before too long. I found a pattern that is going to definitely fill a need in my wardrobe, and that's Kwik Sew 3554, which is for a slip and panties or knickers. I've been looking for a full-length slip for years, and all I can find is short skirt length, and I need a full-length slip. I wear a lot of dresses with opaque tights in the winter, and the fabric often catches on the tights, which can lead to awkward moments. So I want to make a slip. And this is also the first foray into lingerie kind of sewing, which is something I want to get into a little bit more. Then the one pattern I've been looking for quite a while is Kwik Sew 3915, which has ruching around the neck in one version, and then it's got a lapped collar with some ruching in the other version. And I've been trying to find this for about 2 years, so I finally got it. And I think this is going to be another one of those elevated t-shirt patterns with something a little more interesting that you can use with nice lightweight knits, and it'll get you through a lot of days. Those are all the patterns that I got from the little shop in Williams Lake. Then, when I was at Out of Hand the other day, I grabbed another one, which was Kwik Sew 3802, and I don't really know why I bought this. The one version has the long kind of drapey sides, and I don't know how much I like that style. And the second version has the gathering and the ruching at the sides, and I think that might kind of highlight my stomach. So I'm not sure, but if I don't use this for me, I might trace it off in a smaller size and use it for one of my nieces, because I think that one of them in particular would really like this style. So that's what I've been working on, and that's what I have planned. I'm going to try and get a couple more tops done in the next week or so. Got a 4-day weekend this weekend, which is great. I'm hopefully going to get some sewing done, and then eventually it's going to warm up enough that I need to garden, so I want to try and get some sewing done before that time comes. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're well. I'll see you soon.